Hi, in this video we're going to create a break-even chart. The break-even chart will be dynamic. So if we change our variables like our unit price, it updates the chart, or our variable cost, or our fixed cost. I'm going to show you how to create this chart in Excel 365, but I'll also show you how to create it in older versions of Excel. If you look down in the description of the video, I'll leave a link to both parts of this video just to help you navigate. Okay, let's start with the Excel 365 method. Now don't worry about these values at the moment. You'll see how these are useful when we create this table over here. But you need your unit price and your unit variable cost. Your contribution margin is just unit price minus the variable cost. Total fixed cost you need to enter there. Now your break even is your fixed cost divided by the contribution margin per unit. So that tells you need to sell 200 units to break even. Your break even sales would be your break even units times the unit price. So you need to sell £16,000 worth of goods in order to break even. Now we're going to use these values here to create this table for our chart. Let's deal with the units column first of all. Now for this I'm going to use the sequence function. First argument is rows. So how many rows or data points do I want for my chart? Well, we want to make this dynamic, so we're going to refer to this value here, units, number of data points, comma. Columns, we only need one column, so one will do. Comma, start. So what's the lowest unit value I want to see in my chart data? I'll say that's a 0. Comma, step. So what increment do I want to have for my units down these rows? Well, I've expressed that there. Units increment. Close the bracket, press enter. There are my units. Now sales would be equals these unit values. So I'm creating a spilled array formula. So E4 hash multiplied by unit price. Press enter. It spills its results down into those rows. Variable cost, same idea. These unit values multiplied by unit variable cost. Contribution margin would be equals the sales values minus the variable cost values. Fixed cost is always the same. Now, if I use the obvious method to get the fixed cost in each row, and the obvious method would be to say total fixed cost and fix it. So fixing it with the F4 key on my keyboard to give me the dollars, and then copy it down. I do get a problem because if I change the number of data points to 15, although these columns change to reflect the new number of data points, because they are directly or indirectly referring to E4 hash, the spilled array of units, fixed costs aren't doing that. So it doesn't extend the values down into these rows. Now the way around this, the way I can think of doing it, is to do something like this. I definitely need to refer to these units. So I'd say these values minus these values. So it basically cancels out the units plus the total fixed cost. So now, however many data points I have in this table, I get the relevant fixed cost for that data point. Now the total cost is the variable cost plus the fixed cost. Net income would be the sales values minus the total cost. I need to do a little bit of formatting here. So if I select all those values, Control-Shift-4 on my keyboard. What I like about Control-Shift-4, it does show your negative values in red. 200 units is where I break even. £60,000 worth of sales, which is what I calculated down here. So this is the data basically that I need for my chart, but I only need certain columns. I need units and sales, then I'm holding down Control, and then I need fixed costs and total cost. Then I go to the Insert tab on my ribbon, I'm going to the Scatter Graph button, and I'm choosing Scatter with Straight Lines. So now I've got my sales line, my total cost line, and my fixed cost line. But this doesn't give much information about the break-even point. I can see it's there. It would be nice to have these values displayed on the chart. Now to do that, I can include these two values as a data point on my scatter graph. So to add the data point, the chart selected, I go to Design, Chart Design at the top here, select Data, Add, Series Name, so I'll call this Break Even. The X value is my break-even units value, and my Y value, and I'm going to delete what's currently in that little box, is my break-even sales value. I click on OK and then on OK. Now it doesn't display anything for that data point at the moment, but if I go up to the Format tab on my ribbon, go over to the current selection drop down and choose Series Break Even. If I now click on Format Selection, that brings up the Format Data Series for that data point. I click on this paint bucket, go to Marker, expand Marker Options, go to Built-in, change the type. So I'm going to go for this cross here, change the size, and I'm also going to change the width. So now you can see there's my break-even point. It'd be nice to show the values for the break-even point. So if I click on it, go up to this plus sign, top right of the chart, Chart Elements, Data Labels, I tick that. And if I right click on the data label, Format Data Labels, I can choose whether to show the Y value or the X value. At the moment I'm displaying the Y value, but I could show the X value as well, or just the X value. But really I'd like to create a custom label for this break-even point. Now to do that, I'm going to create a text string down in this cell, which I will then use in this data label. To create the text string, I'm going to do a bit of concatenation. I'm going to say equals break-even units concatenated with, and then I want a colon and a space. So I put that in quotation marks, concatenated with the break-even units value. Now I wouldn't want to ever show decimal places for this value. So I'm going to put this within the text function, and the format I want for this value is just a 0. That will exclude any decimal places. The format text value needs to go in quotation marks. Then I'm going to concatenate that with a carriage return, and I can get that by using character 10. Then I'm going to concatenate that with break-even sales, then with a colon and a space, and then concatenate that with the break-even sales value. And that I want to format as currency. It's a bit hard to select down there, so I'll go up to the formula bar and I'll put that within the text function. And the format for that is going to be pound sterling hash, comma, hash, hash 0. Close quotation mark, close bracket, press enter. So now what I can do is if I select that data label and then click on it again, I get the white circles around it. Go up to the formula bar, type equals, and then click into the cell with my little label in, press enter. And then all I need to do is widen it a little bit. I can change the shape of the data label. If I right click, change data label shape, I'm going to choose call out with the down arrow. I think I'll make it the same color as this data point here. So up on the Format tab, Shape Fill, choose that gold background, and I don't think I'll have an outline. Chart title, I can link to this text up here. So in the formula bar, type equals, and then click in this cell. Let's change the unit variable cost to 260. And you can see it automatically updates my chart with the new break-even units and break-even sales. Now it doesn't work quite so well if I change the number of data points. Let's change the number of data points to 12. And it hasn't changed the chart at all. So you can see it's added 2 new rows to my data. They're not formatted. It's a clear indication they've just been added. But it's not picked that up at all within my chart. And the reason for that is that if I go to chart design and select data, and then look at the data sources for each of these series. So let's select sales and edit. I'm not referring to a spilled array of values, I'm just referring to a range. So it's always referring to E4 to E13, but now my data goes down into rows 14 and 15. So how do we get around that? Well, you might think that you just need to put a spilled array reference into this dialog box. So for example, E4 hash, it doesn't like it. So you can't do that. But what you've got to do is create a named reference to these spilled arrays. Now, just gonna move things out of the way a little bit. To create a named reference to these spilled arrays, you need to go to the Formulas tab on your ribbon, Name Manager, New, and the first column we'll create a reference to is the units column. In the refers to box, I'm just going to click into the first cell in the units column and just put a hash after that reference. Then I'm going to do the same for the sales column. So I select the first sales value and then put a hash after that reference. Then I've got to do it for fixed costs. Now, cannot have a space in a named reference. I'm putting in an underscore between fixed and cost. Click in the first fixed cost value, hash. Click on OK. And then lastly for total cost, total underscore cost. Click in the first total cost value, hash. Click on OK. Close. Now back to my chart, chart design, select data, sales series, edit, X values, that's the units column. So I select the current range reference, not the sheet reference, press F3, choose units. Y values, currently referring to the sales column, select that, F3, sales. Then I go to fixed cost. So this is units. This is fixed cost. Total cost, do the same thing. This is units. This is total cost. Click on OK. So now it should work. If I take this up to 15 data points, my table now goes up to 700 units, and you can see that my chart now reflects that. If I changed it back to 10 units, the chart would also reflect that. Okay, so that's how to create a break-even chart using Excel 365. Now we'll go on to creating the same chart in an older version of Excel. So to create a break-even chart in versions of Excel prior to Excel 365, this is probably what I would do. Set up this little table first of all. Units, min and increment I'll explain later on when we create this table. You need your unit price and then your unit variable cost. Your contribution margin per unit would be the difference between those two. Then you'd enter your total fixed cost here. Break-even units would be your total fixed cost divided by your contribution margin per unit. So I know I've got to sell 160 units to break even. The break-even sales would be the break-even units multiplied by the unit price. So now you can start to create this table which will contain all the data for your chart. And to do this, you'd start off with your initial units value as your minimum units value there. And then in the cell below, I'd say this value plus the units increment, and I'd need to fix my reference to that value. and then I copy it down for however many data points I want on my chart. Now the sales value would be the units times the unit price, and I need to fix my reference to that. So I'm pressing F4 on my keyboard, which gives me the dollars, and then I copy this down. And the variable cost will be the units times the unit variable cost. And I fix that and I copy it down. Contribution margin would be the sales minus the variable cost. Copy that down. The fixed cost is always 8,000, so I just refer to C8 and I fix that and I copy it down. The total cost is the variable cost plus the fixed cost. Copy that down. And then the net income is the sales minus the total cost. Now a little bit of formatting. If I select all those monetary values, Control-Shift-4, it makes it really clear where we have our break-even point, or nearly anyway, is at 160, which is between these two data points, where our income goes from negative to positive. Now if I change the unit increments to 40, you can see that now at selling 160 units is where I break even with sales of 32,000. So I know my data is ready for my chart. Now I need the units and sales columns for my chart, so I select those two columns, hold down Control and select the fixed cost and total cost columns. Then I go to the Insert tab on my ribbon. I go over to the Scatter Graph button and I'm choosing Scatter with Straight Lines. So I've got my sales line, I've got my total cost line, and I've got my fixed cost. So you can see where the break-even point is there. But it would be nice to show that on the chart with a little label showing these values. First of all, I need to create that data point. I can do that by creating a data point for these two values. Now to do that, with the chart selected, I go to Chart Design, select Data, Add. So my series name is going to be break even. My x-axis values will be my break-even units, and my y-series values, watch that you do delete what's currently in there, and then select that value. Click on OK. It won't show on the chart until you do this. You go up to Format. From this drop-down menu, choose Series Break-Even, and then click on Format Selection. Click on the paint bucket over here, go to Marker, Marker Options, Built in, choose a type, go for a cross, increase the size, change the width if you like, and there we can see our break-even point. Now to create a label for it, with it selected, you go up to your plus button top right of the chart and say Data Labels. Now to choose what data you actually show in that label, select the label, go to Label Options, and then you can choose X values or Y values. But actually we want to create a slightly more sophisticated label. And to do that, we're going to create some text for the label down here. And what we're going to do is we're going to say equals this text here concatenated with a colon and a space. Notice I use the ampersand symbol to concatenate, and then concatenate the colon and the space with this value here for break-even units. Then on a new line, I want break-even sales. So to create a carriage return, I ampersand this with character 10. Then concatenate that with break-even sales, concatenated with another colon and space, concatenated with the break-even sales. And if I press enter, you can see it says break-even units 160, break-even sales 32,000. Now I want to apply some formatting to the break-even units value and the break-even sales value. I wouldn't want to show decimal places here, and I want to show this as currency. But to do that, I can use the text function. So value is C10, format is very simply in quotation marks as 0. That will prevent any decimal places. And then for C11, also use the text function. So the format for that, again in quotation marks, £, hash, comma, hash, hash 0. Close quotation marks, close bracket. Right, so now if I select this data label and click on it again, I get white circles around it. Go up to my formula bar type equals, click in this cell, press enter. Just need to widen the data label a bit. I can even change its shape. If I right click on its border, change data label shape. I'm going for call out down arrow. Change the background color, format tab on my ribbon, shape fill, go for that gold, same color as my data point, and I can even take the shape outline off. So now, if I change my unit price to say 210, automatically updates the chart, and it would also change the chart if I change the variable cost, so that goes up to 160. Now a few things I might change here, chart title, let's link that to this text up here, and I might want to get rid of break even down here on the legend. So to do that, click into the legend, then click on break even, press delete. Okay, so that's how to create the chart in older versions of Excel, and that's all I wanted to cover in this video. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll see you next video.